So some applause for the attorneys that have presented. And I know I'm kind of moving forward quickly, but I want to save time for face-to-face Q&A at the end. So, and these attorneys will be here at the end of the session, so you can still come and ask your questions. All right, so now I'm going to move to the next attorney, and for that I need to put my glasses on. So Hadi Khan is the next attorney, and when I met him the first few times, I did not like him at all.
Really?
Yes, and the reason was that he was the prosecutor for City of Sugar Land, not dismissing my traffic tickets. Remember that, Hadi? Okay. And believe me, my insurance premium went up by at least 5-fold. Thank you, Hadi. But no, it's not his fault. Of course, it was my fault. Anyway, all jokes aside, Hadi went to high school at Cypress Springs High School. He went to UT Austin, and then he worked as an assistant district attorney in Corpus Christi. How many years did you work as an assistant DA?
2 years.
2 years. Wow. Some more people that don't like. Okay. And then he worked as a prosecutor for City of Sugar Land. Now he has his own practice after he was blessed with his son, Jibril. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Hadi's going to talk about traffic stops and the trial that ensues after you get a ticket. Hadi.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Nice to meet you. As was said, my name is Hadi Khan, born and raised in Houston. As Mr. Zakari was saying, I do have a few years of prosecutorial experience. The reason I went to law school, in part, is because I do enjoy trial, and I enjoy speaking in front of groups of people and being able to persuade a group of people in order to either see it my way or they don't see it my way. And the jury trial is ultimately can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the jury trial is the one aspect of American democracy where the community, the people, the members of the community, the jury, decide whether or not the government has overstepped its boundaries or perhaps is acting in an oppressive manner against the person that they're accusing. So that's a little bit about why I got into criminal law and trial in general. So hitting up on my experience as a prosecutor in the city of Sugar Land. How many of you, raise your hands, have been on a jury before? Have been in a jury selection. Has anybody made it to a jury? Wow, a lot of people. Can I ask what type of trial was it? The criminal or civil?
Domestic.
It's domestic. Was it a criminal trial?
Yeah.
A domestic violence type trial? What was the result?
Nothing.
Not guilty?
No. It was, I don't remember. Actually, it was a long time ago in Brazoria County.
Uh-huh.
So I don't remember what happened, but it was a 3-day trial.
Was it a felony or misdemeanor?
Felony.
And there was a verdict that was reached?
I guess. I'm not sure, but I guess.
Oh, okay. And how many years was this?
How many days?
3 days, but how many years back?
I guess 7 years.
7 years? You know, of all the years I've been living in Houston, I've never made it onto a jury trial. And now that I've become an attorney, I hear it's impossible. You never make it onto the actual jury. And that's something that I've always been curious on what goes on behind there. who else was raising their hand? Can I, you sir, what was your experience?
If it's a criminal case, DUI,
A DUI, and what was the result?
not guilty.
Not guilty? Anyone else? What was your result?
Small claims court,
Small claims court, so that was a civil matter.
eviction, yeah.
And anyone else? Yes? Murder? A murder case. I'm sure you remember the details.
That's important. Stand up, sir.
How long was the trial?
The trial was about 4 days.
4 days. Is that in Harris County or Fort Bend?
I was in Dallas in those days, so it happened in Dallas County.
And what was the final result?
The final result was that we found him guilty of the crime.
Punishment?
And then the judge said that we have to give him the punishment. And that was the most difficult part. And he was sentenced to 32 years. He was 18 years old at the time, and but probably he came out after 7 years on account of good behavior. So because that's how the criminal system works, I guess.
So yeah, so part of the way that it works is that on the misdemeanor level, there's really two different classes of offenses. At the very top, the worst offense in Texas, capital murder, which is punishable by the most serious punishment available, the death penalty. That's the worst possibility that can arise out of a guilty verdict on a capital murder. Underneath that, first degree, second degree, third degree. First degree is going to be 5 to 99 years. Second degree is going to be 2 to 20. Third degree is going to be 2 to 10, and then state jail felonies are 6 months to 2 years. Those offenses are, if you are sent to prison, you go to the Texas Department of Corrections. That area is a different facility than what maybe some of us have seen at the Fort Bend County Criminal Justice Center or Harris County Criminal Justice Center. Those are going to be primarily where Class A, Class B misdemeanors are where people are incarcerated, or that's where a lot of people are incarcerated at the beginning of their of the accusation. May I ask, how long was your jury deliberation?
The jury deliberation lasted about a day and a half because the first one was to find him guilty or not, because there was one juror who said not. So the discussion went on and on and on. So finally he came on board, and we told the judge twice that we can't reach an agreement. The judge said, keep trying. So we tried, and so finally we were all on board. The second part was sentencing. And I personally, myself, my own opinion is that it shouldn't be the responsibility of the jurors to sentence whoever committed the crime. That is very difficult. And that experience that I went through, I don't want to go through again.
It is tough. It is tough.
It sucks everything out of you.
And I would say that not only, yours is probably the hardest job, is being in the
So
deliberation.
it is not a very good situation to be in. I don't know why. I was sweating, but we were all sweating. Everybody was.
The idea of doing the right thing.
Yeah, that is what the thing is, that when you go to bed at night, and when you put your head on the pillow, you don't want to think about it. You know that you did it right. That is what the thing is.
Well, I thank you for your jury service. It's like I said, it's a very important part of the functioning of this democracy. Without this this ability to redress concerns in the court of law with members of the community who are making the decision, the final decision, the whole system would not work the way.
Take the mic, please. They can't ask you.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me better now? So without your cooperation and your involvement this system that we rely upon, that we believe is fair, that is just, would not be able to continue. Sorry, this mic is kind of distracting me. So back to the issue of the sentencing, the different punishment ranges. So at the very end is a Class C misdemeanor. So the Class C misdemeanors are going to be your traffic ticket offenses, your code ordinances, and some very minor level assaults or thefts or drug possession. However, they are serious, they can be serious in several instances, particularly when we're dealing with assaults with finding of family violence, or thefts, which are considered crimes of moral turpitude, or drug possession, which may or may not prohibit you from being eligible for certain types of financial aid later on. So, about the traffic stops, the vast majority of the Class C misdemeanors. Show of hands, how many of us have been stopped by the police for traffic tickets? I know I have my share of traffic tickets. And then I think as a sorry?
Most of us are law-abiding citizens.
So it is definitely somewhat ironic that I ended up in a position as the one prosecuting the traffic tickets in Sugar Land. But the point, the role, I guess, of the prosecutor, the role of the government agent, according to the Code of Criminal Procedure, is that we must seek justice. The person standing in the role of the government prosecuting the case determines what the right thing to do is according to the definition of what is justice. Justice means so many things on so many levels for so many different people. And on an individual level, I can say the goal, the objective was to treat everybody fairly, to treat everyone with respect, to make sure that whatever wrong was being committed, that there has to be some redress, some accountability for whatever was going on. So a lot of people would come to traffic court, and obviously everybody wants to get out of their ticket. So let me tell you a little bit about how you can put yourself in the best position to be successful to do that. So how does the traffic stop usually begin, right? Or let's do this. What's the best way to avoid getting stopped by the police? Sir, what was your name?
Mavlani.
Mavlani? Mr. Mavlani?
Yes.
Had a very terrific point. Most of us are good law-abiding citizens. However, if you're somebody like me, it kind of has a lead foot, so to speak, and it goes a few miles over sometimes. That's the best way of avoiding being stopped by police. Being a careful driver. So make sure that you use turn signals, you drive the speed limit, you wear your seatbelt, make sure your children are restrained, maintain insurance on the vehicle, which is very common, unfortunately. People aren't able to pay for insurance sometimes. Ensure that all your exterior lights are functioning properly, displaying license plate both on the front and the back of the vehicle. And I think one of the most common offenses was mentioned when we were talking about car crashes, the failure to yield right of way, which a lot of times the officers will write a ticket as a result of the accident to kind of indicate who's at fault. So by keeping good, safe driving practices, you reduce your chance of being pulled over by the police. However, if you're stopped, what should you do? So this was one of the things that I saw personally as a, on the side of the city where I was reviewing the evidence and determining whether or not that I would be able to prove all of the elements of the crime, of the traffic offense, beyond a reasonable doubt. And so there's usually going to be a lot of evidence, especially here in Sugar Land. There's going to be body cam video, there's going to be traffic radar technology, possibly a laser gun, and a host of other things. But those are the three main things that I would see repeatedly. And so the first thing the officer does, well, the first thing you should do is pull over safely, in an area that's safe for the officer to come and talk to you, and you're able to be safe as well. And do so reasonably quickly. The longer you stay on the road, the more nervous the officer's going to be about whether or not you're trying to conceal something, whether or not you have something to hide, or you're trying to run away, or you're trying to flee. So once you do that, pull over as quickly and as reasonably as possible. The officer comes to you, and they will ask you. You have the right to ask why you're being stopped, and you should. You should ask why you're being stopped. But usually, what I saw a lot is an officer comes to you and says, "Do you know how fast you were going? Why were you speeding? Why did you not stop at that stop sign? Hey, why did you cut across that property?" And then the person's immediately put on the defenses and says, "Oh, I'm sorry," or an apology. And so that, at the trial level, is what we call an admission. And so that admission can be used at court. And like I said, everything is recorded on the body camera. So your best course of action is to not respond to any type of clever questioning that way. Do not say sorry. Do not apologize for the alleged violation. Because anything that you say will eventually get used against you at the trial level. And a lot of this stuff applies to the Class C traffic ticket violation, but it also applies to things that usually escalate from there. So a lot of the stops, especially on the misdemeanor and felony level, can start off innocently enough with a traffic infraction. Failure to signal. Officer approaches, rolls down the window. The officer needs to establish one thing in order to stop you. Reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion that an offense has occurred. So, obviously you have committed a traffic offense, that's reasonable suspicion to get to the car. You roll down the window, the next thing is going to be an odor. Odor of alcohol or odor of marijuana, usually. And that gives the officer the ability to detain and investigate further, sometimes pulling someone out of the car and searching the vehicle for its contents. So, like I said, as traffic tickets as well, anything you say during that stop and during that investigation can be used against you. So, keep it simple, keep it civil, keep it respectful. You provide the officer with your identification, your registration, your insurance, any proof, or if you don't have that, you make truthful statements as to your identification. Because if you make an untruthful statement as to who you are, that itself is an arrestable offense. Once the stop is complete, unless you're being detained for some other purpose, you are permitted to leave. However, if the officer seems like he's not letting you leave, you need to ask, am I being detained? Once the officer will tell you, yes, you're being detained, or no, you're not being detained. If you're not being detained, then you can continue, as long as the traffic stop has concluded. Throughout the encounter, you have the right to refuse consent to any request by the officer to search your vehicle. So after the traffic ticket's concluded, or maybe, like I said, the officer may have believe that there's an odor of alcohol or marijuana, they may want to investigate from, hey, would you mind if I take a look in your car? You absolutely have the right to say no. You should say, I refuse consent to allow you to search my car. And what that does, it may not prevent the officer from actually searching your car. If they want to, because usually they'll have those other bases, like I said. but it does protect you for later on down the road. Ultimately, there's very little you can do. You definitely should not physically resist in any way, and always keep your tone as respectful and pleasurable as possible. And whatever happens, know that at the end, after the incident occurs, is when there is redress. And so part of why you refuse is to invoke what's your right under the Fourth Amendment against unlawful searches or seizures. If you consent, a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, if I do what the officer wants me to do, then it'll all work out for me, or they'll be helpful. Sometimes, rarely that occurs, but it has occurred. I mean, that's a judgment call as well. You gotta make. But for purposes of the traffic ticket, keep it short, keep it simple. Say refuse to admit any fault if you want to try to contest it later on and give yourself the best shot at contesting it later on. Yes.
But you said don't say you're sorry. So and be polite. So what do you say? What you just keep quiet?
You say,
or you say I didn't do it, or you did do it. What do you?
well, I wouldn't admit it. You don't have
what
to
do you
admit
do?
it.
Like he says, well, you were driving fast. Why?
Here you go, officer. Would you like do you need my driver's license and insurance?
Oh, you just give him. You
Yeah.
say here's
You
my.
don't.
So you just say here's my driver's license and my insurance, and don't look at him.
Well,
What do you do?
you can look at him. You can look at him. You can look at him. But you don't have to apologize.
But you just keep quiet. In other words, you don't say nothing. Or, I mean, I would naturally say, oh, I'm sorry, officer, but whatever.
Well, you can do that too.
Start by
This is what happens. If you say you're sorry, someone can use that against you as an admission later on in trial. However, like we were talking about Class C misdemeanors, the punishments are it's up to $500 fine, and there's usually a deferred disposition, which allows you to keep it off your record. Like Mr. Zakaria did not mention, is that pretty much 99.9. I don't think I ever gave a conviction on a traffic conviction.
I got a ticket on the last day of the probation. So.
Oh, well, that's his fault. He got 2 tickets within the probationary period. That's your own fault. There has to be some accountability.
I like you now, I told you. You've come to the light side.
All right, so I know that maybe some of this was relevant, some of it was not relevant, but the point of me coming here was just to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about my experience. Like I said, born and raised here. I'm practicing criminal defense. I used to be a prosecutor in Corpus Christi. I used to handle misdemeanor criminal offenses. Went to trial several times. Was placed in a program that dealt specifically with domestic violence issues. So, following that, I moved up to felony. Have trial experience on the felony level, and I'm not saying anyone in here has been accused of misdemeanor or felony criminal offense, but other than a traffic ticket. But some of our loved ones may or may not be accused of such a thing in the future, and these types of offenses have long-lasting effects, as the gentleman said over here.
Okay, so we only have limited time. We only have time for 2 very pointed questions, and then, of course, you can approach Adi at the end and ask him a question.
I want to you said that if a cop asks you that I want to search your car, you said that you have a right to refuse, but why to refuse if you don't have to?
That's an excellent question. Why refuse if you have nothing to hide? Well, I can tell you that Everyone on this planet makes mistakes, right? And that is also true for law enforcement. Sometimes mistakes are made, misunderstandings happen, and an innocent person can find themselves and have found themselves subject to the law and the prosecution of a case against them because of a misunderstanding. So I was thinking about that question this morning, and I was like, well, what's something I could think of? Well, for example, anybody carry around loose tablets of prescription medication? I used to be a pharmacy technician. So anybody know what Prevacid is? Or omeprazole? I think there's the generic. That's antacid medication. You're holding around loose tablets of that. To an officer, it could be anything. And that could be a felony charge against you. And so perhaps some loose tablets fell in your car, and the officer finds that and finds some reason to arrest you for that. So that's one reason why you would want to refuse consent in the case of some unforeseen tragedy or situation in the future. And you lose nothing. Because the officer, if they're asking for consent to search your car, there's a reason, right? They're not doing it just, oh, well, let me just see what this person has to look around. There must be some suspicion of some kind of illegal activity. And if there's not a suspicion of illegal activity, then why do they need to just look in your car? Why not? Why would you give them the consent to do so?
So, last question, and then we'll open everyone.
A very general question. When we are pulled over by a police officer, and did he have the right to ask the status of the driver as well as the passengers?
The officer can ask any question they want to. You don't have to respond as to your status. You do not have to. The one thing that you do have to respond to is your identity, right? So they do have a right to know who you are, as long as they have. You need to respond with truthful information, because like I said, that was also very common on the misdemeanor level in Corpus Christi, where people were giving fake identification info, and you get arrested for that if they find out. Usually, they found out. They check in their computer.
All right, I'd like to thank all the speakers for coming today. Thank you, Hadi. Thank you, Ahmed. And I also like to thank Muslim Bar Association of Houston. I'd like to recognize Umar Khwaja and Mr. Sutrawala. They're both on the board of Muslim Bar Association of Houston. And of course, Farha Ahmed for organizing this event.
On the board.
And of course, Farah Kamal as well. And then thank you, Maryam Masjid, for allowing us to host this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great.